let's talk about something fascinating. What if I told you that one of the most powerful things you could do for your brain health has nothing to do with crossword puzzles or superfoods, but actually has everything to do with your ears? We're going to dive into this surprising and honestly incredibly important connection between our hearing and the long-term health of our minds.
So, let's start with this number, 7%. It might not sound like much, but according to a major 2024 update from the Lancet Commission, hearing loss in midlife accounts for 7% of the dementia risk that we can potentially change. That makes it the single biggest modifiable risk factor. The number one thing on the list that we can actually do something about.
So that really makes you think, right? We're so focused on diet and exercise and brain games to keep our minds sharp, but what if we've been overlooking a huge piece of the puzzle this whole time? What if taking care of your hearing is one of the most direct, most proactive things you can do for your brain? All right, so let's get into it. This isn't just some wild new theory. We're going to look at the science, which has been building for decades, that solidifies this incredible link between our ears and our brains. You know, this idea didn't just pop up overnight. The evidence has been quietly building for more than 30 years. It really started back in 1989, with some of the first studies hinting at a connection. Then, in 2011, a huge study from Johns Hopkins put actual numbers to the risk. By 2020, the Lancet Commission officially called it the #1 risk factor we can change. And now? Well, now we have studies that are showing us the physical proof right there in the brain.
One of the reasons this might have flown under the radar is that the early warning signs can look really similar. Think about it. Someone who's pulling back from social events or seems frustrated during conversations. You might think it's a mood change or a cognitive issue, but it could just be that they're struggling to hear. This overlap is exactly why getting a proper hearing test is so important.
And that 2011 Johns Hopkins study, it gave us this pretty shocking data. Even a mild hearing loss doubles your risk of dementia. A moderate loss triples it. And a severe loss, that's a 5 times higher risk. This isn't just a small connection, it's a ladder. The more your hearing declines, the higher your risk climbs. It's incredibly clear. Okay, so the big question is, why? How on earth does hearing loss actually affect the brain? Well, scientists have zeroed in on 3 main reasons that explain what's going on under the hood. So the first idea is something called cognitive load. Here's a simple way to think about it. Your brain is like a computer with a certain amount of processing power. When sounds are muffled or unclear because of hearing loss, your brain has to work way harder just to figure out what's being said. All that effort drains resources that should be going to other things, like, remembering things or making decisions.
Second, and this is wild, the brain can physically change. The parts of your brain that process sound aren't getting the input they're designed for. So what happens? It's the classic use it or lose it scenario. These areas can actually start to shrink. Brain scans have shown this loss of gray matter, which is basically a sign of the brain aging faster than it should.
And the third reason is all about our behavior. I mean, it's just plain harder to be social when you can't follow the conversation. It's exhausting. So people naturally start to pull back, to withdraw, and we know from tons of other research that social isolation is a huge, separate risk factor for dementia. It's like a domino effect that starts with the ears and ends up impacting the entire brain. And we can actually see this happening. We have concrete proof now from MRI scans. The famous Framingham Heart Study looked at people before any signs of dementia, and they found that the adults with hearing loss already had smaller brains overall and more of these little white matter lesions, which are basically signs of damage to the brain's wiring. It's like hearing loss is an early warning sign of accelerated brain aging. Okay, I know this all sounds a little scary, but here's where the story takes a really positive turn. If hearing loss is part of the problem, can treating it be part of the solution? Can a hearing aid literally act as a brain aid? Well, the answer seems to be a resounding yes. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at this quote from that 2024 Lancet report. They say the evidence that treating hearing loss helps is getting stronger. This is coming from one of the most respected authorities on dementia in the world. It's a huge deal. And the data is pouring in to back this up. Check out these 3 major studies. You've got the cochlear study showing cochlear implants improved brain function, the Achieve trial which found hearing aids slowed down cognitive decline, and the Framingham study again finding that for people who used hearing aids, the extra dementia risk was basically gone. It's a clear, consistent pattern. Let's just focus on that cochlear study for a second. Think about this.